Did you know there are certain skins in the game that will actually nerf your champion? Although some skins may look super flashy or have unique animations, these effects can actually put you at a major disadvantage. In today's video, we're going to be covering 15 of these skins that you may want to reconsider buying if you really want that competitive edge. But before we get into it, be sure to check out Skill Capped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work. And if it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description below. The first pay-to-lose skin is one of the more egregious ones we'll cover in this video, and it's Battle Academia Ezreal. With Ezreal's base skin, there's no indicator as to how many passive stacks he has. Battle Academia, on the other hand, is a pay-to-lose skin because it actually shows the enemy exactly how many passive stacks Ezreal is at. This is extremely pay-to-lose while in lane if you end up dropping your passive stacks. Ezreal's extended trade power is very strong in lane when he has max passive stacks, but when he's at 0 stacks, there's a huge drop-off in DPS. If the enemy is waiting for an opportunity to trade and they notice all the particles drop off from around Ezreal, they can trade way more confidently since Ezreal will be lacking a ton of damage potential. Even if you don't play Ezreal yourself, definitely watch out for this whenever the enemy is using this skin, as it's a great tool. One of the newer skins in the game just released this past year is called Ilusion Nidalee, and it nerfs her quite hard. There is very distinct orange and red tone around Nidalee's spear with this skin, which makes landing the ability less reliable. Nidalee's spear with her classic skin does not have as aggressive of a glow to it, and the base of the spear is brown. If you're in the middle of a hectic fight, it's going to be much harder for the enemy to spot out a classic Nidalee spear than it will be for them to see Ilusion. Next skin up is Space Groove Ornn, and this one is just way easier for the enemy to play into. The main downside to Space Groove is that its Q is blue in color and has an orange circle pulsing up the pillar. The ability just sticks out like a sore thumb, and there's no way for the spell to blend into any terrain at all. Base Ornn Q is literally black with a bit of orange around it, so it's much more subtle and difficult to pick up on in a big fight. Classic Ornn Q also looks like it could be a part of the map terrain, whereas with Space Groove, there's no shot. With Tryndamere's base skin, he glows when using his ultimate, but it can still be a bit difficult to know if he's popped ult or not at times. The Chemtech Tryndamere skin makes it way easier for the enemy to decipher if Tryndamere has used R and know when it's run out. There are more moving particles around Tryndamere when he's using the Chemtech skin, while with the classic skin, it's not as extreme. If the enemy is waiting to use their abilities for when Tryndamere R runs out, it's going to be way easier for them to execute on that against a Tryndamere who's running the Chemtech skin. Project Zed is one of the oldest pay-to-lose skins in the game. With Zed's classic ultimate, it does give you a little bit of an indication as to when it will pop by glowing brighter red. With Project though, the indicator is extremely clear and way less subtle than the classic skin. As you can see with the Project skin, it starts off flashing bright orange and then eventually a shuriken will form. As soon as the shuriken forms, you know for certain that ZR is going to explode shortly after. This just makes timing Zhonya's so much easier for the enemy if you're using the Project skin. With classic Zed, even though the enemy will have a general idea of when ZR will pop, it's not as crystal clear as with Project, so the enemy is much more likely to mistime their Zhonyas if you're using the classic skin. Following up with another Project skin, this next one is Project Vayne. Project Vayne is pay to lose because the E animation is so much easier to pick up on than the base skin. This is especially bad for you if you're playing against someone like Yasuo who will want to be timing his wind wall for when you use E. With Project Vayne, she's going to jump up in the air to start her E animation, and if you can pick up on this jump as soon as it starts, reacting with something like Yasuo wind wall can hard counter the skin. With classic Vayne, she doesn't have this jump animation, and her E starts off like a normal auto attack, which makes it way more difficult for the enemy to know when you're using E. Karthus is a champion who's extremely skill shot reliant with his Q, so it's imperative the ability is as difficult to see as possible. With that said, one skin you want to avoid in this case is Infernal Karthus. Infernal Karthus Q is bright orange, which makes it way easier for the enemy to spot. The classic Karthus Q has more of a darker tone to it, which helps the spell blend into terrain. Especially when you are fighting in the river, classic Karthus Q is much more difficult to pick up on than Infernal, since the classic Q is very similar in color to the river. Urgot's passive is extremely important to utilize in his trading pattern. With the classic Urgot skin, the passive charges are green. High Noon, on the other hand, has a bright orange glowing passive. It's super easy to decipher whether or not Urgot has a passive charge with High Noon, while it's more subtle with the classic skin. One Caitlyn skin that really stands out as being pay to lose is Arcade. The traps with Arcade Caitlyn are pink and red, which make them very easy to spot around the map. The classic Caitlyn traps are brown and white, which do a much better job at blending in. With Arcade, there's really no chance the enemy is ever going to run into a trap on accident because it's so noticeable. Of course, it's still unlikely for enemies to just randomly walk over traps regardless of what skin you're using, but you kind of completely take the possibility out of the question when playing arcade. Star Guardian Lux is pay to lose because the Q particle is way easier to track with this skin. It's a bright pinkish red color with stars popping up inside the spell. There's also more of a distinct outline around the Star Guardian Q, which gives better indication as to the width of the spell. Lux Classic Q has none of these stars, and it's much more difficult to decipher the width of the ability. Classic Lux Q is also just a dot that swerves around while it's traveling, while Star Guardian just travels in a straight trajectory. A lot of the skins we've covered so far nerf the champion due to certain particle effects, but one skin that just feels bad to use is Omega Squad Teemo. This one feels very clunky compared to the classic Teemo skin. The auto animation isn't very smooth, and the Q animation is very noticeable for the enemy. When you move with Omega Squad Teemo, you sway side to side quite a bit, which adds this feeling of heaviness to the skin. The model of Omega Squad Teemo is also much larger than that of classic Teemo, and although the hitbox of the champion does not change, it gives the enemy a bigger target to shoot at if they are trying to land a skill shot. High Noon Ashe is a really interesting skin because after she uses her first R of the game, her model completely changes. Prior to using R, she will have a brown cape around her back, but once she uses R, her model changes for the rest of the game, giving her these white wings on her back. If the enemy knows this, they could in a way track whether or not you have your R available right around the level 6 mark. If you see Ashe hits level 6 with her brown cape, but she dips out of vision for a second and then reappears with the wings on her back, you'd be able to deduce that she tried using her R across the map. This could then be the trigger for you to look for a fight, as it would be more favorable without Ashe having R. With Sion W, you're able to recast it after 3 seconds to detonate and deal damage. Mecha Zero's Sion gives the enemy a very clear indication as to when the 3 seconds are up, as the color of Sion's W changes from blue to yellow. With classic Sion, there's no distinct change in color of his W that would be a clear giveaway that the ability is ready to recast. So if you're playing against a Sion who's using the Mecha skin, you'll know when he has his damage pop available and know to back off until it expires. Although not as noticeable as the Project Vayne skin we covered earlier, Sentinel Vayne also has a wind up to her E animation. Her model jumps upwards and gives the enemy a more clear indication that it's her E being used and not just an auto attack. Battlecast Vel'koz is one skin that makes the champion feel a lot more clunky to play. The model is larger than that of classic Vel'koz, which doesn't actually change the hitbox of the champion, but it feels like you are a bigger target. If the feel of the skin is very important to you, then Arclight and the Infernal are miles better in that regard. The Q with Battlecast also looks like a much larger projectile, so it's easier to spot and react to. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about Skill Capped. So, we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent Challenger players into Elo Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. So that's going to be all for this one, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you back soon.